All right, well, let's get started. Good morning from Pottsville, and welcome to the 16th annual Republican-Herald Economic Roundtable. I am Andy Heinzelman, the managing editor, the one that's been reaching out to you. And as I described in the invitation letter, this project serves as a cover story for our annual business review section. And I just want to thank every one of you for accepting the invitation. I'm confident that this is going to be an informative discussion and that your input, could make a difference in the effort toward finding a solution for what's been described as a crisis in the childcare industry. As Dave said, we're recording this session, and we try to and usually do stay on record, throughout. But please, there are some instances that it's pertinent to go off the record if someone has something they want to share that they think is important, but might compromise privacy or sensitive information, whatever. So we can talk that out as we go, but we will record and of course produce a story or maybe two stories from this. First, I'd like everyone to introduce themselves. If we were in person, we could go around the table, but since we're not, I'll just kind of read off names, and then if you can tell us who you're with and what you do. I'll start with Peter Keatsock.
Good morning. My name is Peter Keatsock. I am the executive director of Avenues. Avenues' primary business is to support individuals with disabilities. However, we do operate First Friends Daycare. We've been operating it since 1994. Previous to that, it was a center-based early intervention program. When we stopped providing center-based early intervention, we decided to keep our daycare. So we've been doing it since 1994. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks. Holly Zielinski.
Hello, my name is Holly Zielinski. I own and operate the Doodlebug Preschool and Daycare Center.
Thanks, Holly. Michelle.
My name is Michelle DeLego, and I am owner, director of the Perception Training Center and Early Child Care Center in Pottsville.
Okay, thanks. Angela Kelly.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Angela Kelly. I'm the HR manager at Mrs. T's Pierogies, where we make pierogies.
Bob Carl.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Bob Carl, Schuylkill Chamber of Commerce, President and CEO, serving 800 business and nonprofit members.
All right, thanks, Bob. Is Samantha still with you?
Samantha's on, yes.
Samantha?
Hello, I'm Samantha Chavinsky. I'm the Member Relations Director for the Schuylkill Chamber of Commerce, and also a mom. So.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Mike Hammer.
Problems on mute there. Sorry. Yeah, Mike Hammer, Senior Director of Operations here at the Cressona facility for Hydro Extrusions. Worked here for 32 years under all 5 different entities over that course of time. We're up to like 1,130 employees right now and growing. We're attempting to grow, so you'll get my perspective on how childcare is a variable in that growth equation as we go forward. So you may, unlike pierogies, which everybody knows what a pierogi is, an extrusion is a structural shape made out of aluminum, and they're in pretty much every single vehicle that's on the road today. The big thing is EVs, electrical vehicles, with the sustainability push that's out there in the world today to try to control global climate. So you'll get a lot of our components in the EVs, but we're pretty much in every single market segment there is out there. So thanks for having me today.
Thanks for taking part. We appreciate it, especially a company with some global reach. It's good to have. I saw Mary Ann Devlin.
Good morning, everyone. Mary Ann Devlin. I'm the Executive Director for Child Development Incorporated here in Schuylkill County. We provide the Head Start program, PA pre-K counts, and childcare in 8 different locations for more than 600 children. And I've been with the program for 35 years. I celebrated that anniversary in September. So I've witnessed a lot of changes and growth and issues facing early education and childcare in the county. So I'm happy to be part of the discussion this morning.
Great, thanks. Mary Ann, and I also want to point out Bob and Samantha. Thank you for the some of the preliminary work and helping getting this going. So appreciate that. Did Diane Barber, trying to catch up with my screen here. I don't see Diane. She may be joining
She's
us.
not going to be able to make it.
Okay, Barb, you go ahead, Barb Starkey.
Hi, I'm Barb Starkey. I'm with Community Services for Children. I'm the Regional Director for the Early Learning Resource Center, Region 13, which includes Schuylkill County in our service area. And we provide resource and referral services to the public, basically around early care, other options for families as well, and manage the subsidized childcare program, the state subsidy. And we also manage the Keystone Stars Quality Improvement Rating System for childcare providers.
Okay, great. Thank you. And Karen Grimm-Thomas from the Department of Education.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Karen Grimm-Thomas. I'm the Director of External Relations for actually the Office of Child Development and Early Learning. We are a unique state department that is sits underneath both the Department of Human Services and the Department of Education. Our office was created to pull together the majority of the state's programming for families with children birth to age 5. We go a little bit higher than that when we think about our school-age childcare system, but we oversee the childcare system in Pennsylvania, so childcare regulations, work with Barb. Barb is, the Early Learning Resource Centers are our business partner in terms of how we administer childcare works in our Keystone Star system. We oversee early intervention services, both 0 to 3 and 3 to 5, our home visiting and family support services, and then our pre-K programs, our pre-K counts and state-funded Head Start, which we refer to as the Head Start Supplemental Assistance Program. So all those things are underneath our office, and depending on the funding stream, we look to our DHS side of our house or our Department of Ed side of our house. And with early learning, we have both things coming in. And I'm just the Director of External Relations for them. Thanks for having me.
No, thanks for taking part. And last two inside the building here, Hun Su.
Hi, I'm Hyun-Soo Lee. I'm a new reporter for the Republican.
And our boss, Mike Joyce.
Thanks, Andy. Mike Joyce, I'm the publisher of the Republican-Herald. I want to thank you all for committing some time this morning. We think it's a very important and timely topic for our economic roundtable for business review. I look forward to listening to you guys' answers and learning some things. And I'll tell you that business review is one of the most popular special issues that the Republican-Herald publishes every year. This year is going to come out on Friday, February 25th. So again, thank you for your time this morning.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Well, let's get started. I'll mostly work off the list of questions that I sent to you, but we'll allow the conversation to kind of go where it must. And I want to start. I should recognize Lori Spots at Child Development. Talk to her as well. Works with Mary Ann, and I asked her in coming up with this theme and things I was hearing and reading in the news and so forth. And I asked her, so how bad is the situation for parents and providers? And she said, oh my God, it's awful. Parents are in tears. And I thought, wow, this is just, we need to talk about this. So I'd like to start with the child care providers. Tell us, even just briefly for now, what things were like before the pandemic and then how much worse it's become. I'll pick a name here. How about Holly? Can you start for us?
Hi. Several things have changed and several really have remained the same as far as our center. Comes right to the top of my head would be the cleaning and disinfecting, and that was already a daily thing, times I don't know how many times a day. Now it's just every single surface that's touched, repeatedly cleaning. As far as the children, they mask wearing, no mask wearing, they're just happy to be here. So as far as that, I don't see too many changes with them. We don't allow parents in the building now, so that's a little different. Parents seem to enjoy, we call it express drop off though. So other than that, the only other thing I could think of that's changed is this year's, the sickness has been outrageous. It has been, last year we had nobody quote unquote sick, and this year it seems every other day there's something new.
When did that start?
So that would be my main for changes.
Okay. All right.
This year, I would say like August, September-ish, I want to say. And last year there was absolutely nothing.
Okay. If you had to, from a business standpoint, pre-pandemic and post-pandemic, if you gave it a rating of how things are going for you, and again, you don't have to divulge any details here, but on a scale of 1 to 10, how were things before and how are things now?
Maybe like a 5 or a 6, maybe. Because I did not accept any children, maybe 2, since we've been open again, just because of the pandemic. So there was, as far as our acceptance, our waiting list, it's still there. But I don't accept any new children currently until this is all underway. Biggest fear is, staffing with, if they would get COVID, I don't have anybody to cover, if somebody would get sick or be out for the extended quarantine. It was just better for me to just stay where we're at.
Gotcha. Okay. Michelle, tell us a little bit about what's going on at Perception.
Hi. Thinking about the pandemic and, the shutdown back in March of 2020, the first thoughts that came to my mind were our national security. I was thinking that we've had pandemic before. I was going back to 2009 and the N1H1, and I thought to myself, why this virus? Why are we shutting down? And it was just a thought, and then it kind of went into, okay, now what? I was living in a bubble. Everything that I do is about our early child care center, our families, our staff, and our children. And so it pulled me out of that bubble pretty quick. I had to watch the news every day. I had to read every email coming through, and I wanted to take every training that CDC was sending through. And so I think initially when the governor shut us down, I almost felt a sense of calmness, because I wasn't the one that had to tell my families, I'm not going to serve your children right now based on my decision. That was a very uncomfortable thing for about a week when I knew the schools shut down, and we stayed open that week. And then, it almost like gave me a minute to breathe, saying, okay, this is now out of my control. So there's a certain serenity to that.
Right.
And then what we did was we just had to stay connected with our families every day, sending emails every day and sharing, the information that we had. There were so many things that were worrisome. Off the bat, I lost 2 teachers. One said I'm compromised, health-wise, and everyone was very unsure of what was going on. And so there were those moments of worry. If we don't have staff, we can't care for children. So staff is an important piece. But then I actually also, again, felt comfort. I mean, I see Marianne Devlin here on the screen, and she is my comfort. She is a world of knowledge and always giving advice to us that can put us more in a state of calm. And she kind of can make the gray look more clear. And so we partner with child development. We have a PA pre-K counts, classroom. And I really felt supported along the way. There was the CARES Act that came to be. Without that program, without the PPP loan, I don't know that we would still be here. And so I just feel that I felt very supported, with knowing, even Mary Ann said, help will come. And so.
Okay, good description. And high praise for Mary Ann Devlin. Anyone who can make sense out of things and clear things up in the last 2 years is doing a good job. What about your business? How much has it changed? Just briefly, like about the same in terms of number of children and so forth, or has it been affected?
Oh my goodness, our enrollment is great. Our enrollment is full. We do have a waiting list. When it first happened, I had 3 families out of 70 that said that they were in need of care. So 3 out of 70, was not going to sustain us. We had maybe 13 that said, hey, if you got a waiver, we would probably come. So again, that was the 13 out of 70.
Wow, that's a huge.
Yes, but now we're back at full enrollment, and we were very quickly. We opened, 2 months later, and we went right back to full enrollment.
Good.
The issues were staffing, and so initially with COVID, when you had a sniffle, when you had a cough, you had to get out and you had to test and you had to be out for a longer length of time. And so that was very troublesome for me, because then it took me out of the directing role. I was in classroom all of the time. And so I felt that I wasn't always running things, being in a classroom all of the time. So now I'm just on a hiring spree and I just hired 2. I just hired 2 this week. And I thought, I don't know if we can afford it, but I just want that little bit of backup so that, I can get back into a leadership role and really start to look at things again.
Great. Okay. Thank you. Peter, how about at First Friends? Tell us what's going on there and how it's changed since before the pandemic.
Well, one thing I will say, staffing was an issue prior to the pandemic, at least for us. We were fortunate, the CARES Act money, the PPP, that sustained us. We did, for 2020, I thought we did a really good job. We were able to keep our classrooms separate, and that helped us a lot. And then as time went on, and we did start to lose some staff, that kind of went out the door on us. And I describe it as a roller coaster ride. It's been hard. It's not an easy. It's not easy. We were down. Like right now we are down staff. So we could accept more children if we had more staff at this time. But one thing I will say, the staff we have right now, I'm very happy with. So what we were seeing, the people we were seeing applying were of what I would consider lower quality. It's harder to find qualified staff. That you're gonna, have with children. The other thing that kind of it does in this environment hurt us is it's probably when we offer somebody a job and they accept, it's probably about 4 weeks till we can get them in a classroom. And what we're finding is the longer that takes, the greater the chance that they're not coming, because there's so many other opportunities for people to work right now. So that's one of the things that we see as a challenge.
Peter, enlighten me. 4 weeks training or just?
So typically a person, if they have a job, they're given 2 weeks notice.
Right, for starting.
So then there's training that's required prior to somebody working. There is a physical that's required. Sometimes just getting that physical scheduled is problematic. Clearances prior to being in the classroom. So what we're finding is on average, it's taking about 4 weeks for us.
All right, that's a good bit of lag time. That's difficult. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a little bit of perspective from the childcare providers themselves. I thought maybe Barb or even Mary Ann, either of you, if you'd like to jump in and give us your perspective. You work with these childcare providers, these and many others. Tell us about some of the challenges that you have seen from with the pandemic, and we will detail then get into the staffing, low wages, and that kind of thing. But just generally, tell us about some of the kind of things you're experiencing. We'll start with Barb.
Really everything that's already been mentioned, a lot of confusion initially, and that just really continued throughout this whole pandemic as guidelines changed. What we're hearing from a parent perspective, we have quite a number of subsidized parents who are unable to find an opening for their children. And that does come back to staffing. Providers may have the capacity, but they don't have the staff to reach full enrollment. We're hearing that people can find employment with less stress and less responsibility for more money. And really, I think the biggest thing is just that the communication and providers get stuck in the middle between the families needing childcare and wanting to keep the children safe and healthy and wanting to follow whatever the current guidance of the week happens to be. Mary Ann, what do you have to add?
I would echo what everyone has already said. I mean, when Lori, you originally mentioned talking with Lori and that parents were crying, when we get phone calls for parent interest in specifically childcare, we have very limited slots at child development anymore. I commend anyone who does childcare on their own today because of all of the challenges. We're unique at child development because we have the Head Start grant and the Pre-K Counts grant to be able to cost allocate. But we do provide childcare in those programs. More than half of our Head Start parents are working. So you're talking about, families meeting the federal poverty guidelines to be able to be eligible for that program. And then we expand their day and their year with wraparound childcare. And we do that also for Pre-K Counts. Pre-K Counts is a great program. I don't think we get the message out there that that's, 101 to 300% of the federal poverty guidelines. So for families that you have working for you, for some of the employers, that's a family of 4, on the upper end of $70,000 a year, that would be eligible for a free portion of their day and then wrap around childcare. So, historically, when I came to the program, we had a childcare budget and back in the 90s of over $2 million. Our childcare budget now is just about $300,000, simply because we had to make a business decision, even as a nonprofit. Do we continue to run in a deficit for childcare? Because we can ask parents to pay more money. And at that time, the subsidy reimbursement was not enough to provide a quality program. And we did infant, toddler, school age, we did it all. And we just could not continue being a childcare provider standalone. We had Head Start at the time, but then we just looked to convert slots from childcare to Head Start and then Pre-K Counts so that we could sustain ourselves and provide a program for over 600 children in the county, and focused mainly on preschool age children. So when Lori said parents are crying and they're upset, it's because we, number one, cannot serve infants or toddlers, and we have limited 4 private fee slots available in our classrooms, just because we could not continue to do it. If you want to try to pay staff a decent wage, if you want to provide benefits for staff, with the regulations and the requirements for qualifications. And, I'm all for that, because taking care of someone else's child is serious business. And we need all of those things in place, but they come at a cost. And parents just simply in a county like Schuylkill County could not afford to pay what the cost of that quality is. It's very challenging, and I commend anyone that is doing it solely on subsidized reimbursement and private fee, because it is a challenge.
Very good. Yeah, well said. And I think some of what you talked about there is reflective of the fact that this was a problem before the pandemic. And similar to last year, we talked about staffing, the lack of staff in a different context with businesses. And the pandemic took what at the time they said was a problem and made it a crisis, and childcare is just one element of that. But of course, it affects so many other things. We'll get to that through talking to some of our business folks that are with us shortly. But I wanted to jump to Karen and talk a little bit about, we had that exchange, Karen, about the number of the survey that I cited, 7,100 fewer workers in childcare. I think maybe you have some data or some information to pass along from the state's perspective, what you're seeing in the industry throughout Pennsylvania.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I was curious about the survey, your numbers. We recognize the survey that was done by the statewide campaigns, the childcare and pre-K campaigns. But I think one of the really interesting things is that at this point in Pennsylvania, we're still really struggling to kind of understand what the childcare workforce is. When we look at our data from the Department of Labor, it's very broad. The category is very broad, and they often include folks in that early childhood kind of sector that are they work in early childhood, but they're doing other jobs. So an early interventionist would be included in there. And so to really understand what our childcare workforce, what are the qualifications that they have right now? What are they making? These are, questions that our office is grappling with. Part of our Keystone Stars program is we have a workforce registry. And as we've rolled that workforce registry out each year, we've added different requirements into the Keystone Stars program that are trying to incentivize folks to get their staff, get their information into the registry, get them placed on our career pathway so that we both understand their current credentials that they have, and we can help them think about what their pathway is if they're looking to gain any credentials. So we're still really, in the infancy of really understanding what the workforce in Pennsylvania looks like. But we do know, through working with our early learning resource centers and in, working with the statewide advocacy organizations, partnering with them, that there's definitely statewide been a decrease in staffing. It's actually a national issue, and it's an issue that's I think we feel it in childcare very much so, because childcare is the underpinning of all other employment. But the bottom line is when you look at any service industry, whether it's long-term living, they're having similar issues. Folks, I think, the pandemic has thrown things into perspective, and people have new expectations and are not feeling valued in doing that kind of service work. So, our office is aware of it. We've been working with our professional development organizations to think about the pipelines that we're creating. We have a pilot going in the southwest part of the state that's looking at career and technical schools, high schools, and getting those kids that are in those childcare curriculums, getting them CDA ready so that they're, we've got this folks coming out of high school ready and interested in thinking about working. We're working on early childhood in teacher prep programs, but really trying to get that pipeline moving so that there are more folks coming into the field saying they think childcare is a viable career to have. But when salaries are low and typically the average childcare provider, as Marianne said, that doesn't have those grant funds coming in, isn't embedded in a larger organization that has those kinds of supports. The idea of offering benefits to staff is a real struggle. So we know that those kinds of things aren't happening in the system. And until we start to until we start to be able to fund the system that really reflects what the cost of actual care is, we're going to continue to have this problem. I see Marianne's giving me the thumbs up. She and I have had lots of conversations about this, huh, Marianne? Oh,
I just think, to chime in, I just think, the value on childcare, I'm just glad, if anything comes out of the pandemic, a light shining on childcare. In our program, we call it, the third leg of the stool. We have Head Start, pre-K, and childcare. And yet, the funding for childcare is so dramatically different than for the other two programs. And I think it's just time that we start to say, how can we fund childcare at the same level of the other important elements of early childhood education? It's more than babysitting. It's more than, it's an important piece of the puzzle for young children, for families, and, for families that are working. So it's just been devalued for so long. And it's time we start giving it the recognition and the funding that it deserves.
Yeah,
and not putting the burden of that on parents,
and staff.
and staff.
We're subsidizing the system on the backs of the work, the folks that are doing the work.
Right.
By lowering wages, and yes, so you can't get more from parents, and staff are already not making what they need to make. So something needs to give, definitely. You're muted. Yeah, we can't.
Andy, you're on mute.
Anybody else here? Yeah.
Sorry about that. I knew it had to do it at least once. There was some noise outside my office, so I muted. The providers, can you maybe cite some examples of why someone did leave, or someone that you had hoped to hire but couldn't take the job, in reference to what Karen and Marianne were talking about in terms of wages and just the demands for the lack of adequate pay in the service sector, that kind of thing?
I have hundreds of examples. I'll try to think of one. We hire teachers with credential. We hire staff that have, BS degree. And when we do that, we hurt ourselves because we're competing with the school districts. I had a beautiful teacher who came into our program and spent a year with us and actually loved what she was doing. But one day we were putting the laundry in at the end of the day, and she said, I've always wanted to be in the district. But I'm not going to go now, she said, with the pandemic going on. And she got a call maybe a month later and she was gone. There's something to be said. Marianne was, commenting on how this industry is so devalued. And it's crazy to me to think, because it's the foundation of everything. The way that we raise these children, the way that we educate our babies, says everything to do with what's going to happen all the way through. We support our public school districts. We support our workforce by making sure that these children are socialized properly and know how to resolve conflict. And, education is the icing on the cake. Learning, the math and the language is the icing on the cake. Just learning how to be a good human being and how to, use their minds in creative ways. This is it. There's nothing else that is going to change a world the way a properly funded, education system for our early childhood, providers and it amazes me that it is not the central focus of everything in a great country, like the United States.
Well said. Interesting comments there. Good. Peter or Holly? Go ahead, Holly.
I find what I end up, what's up? Can you hear me?
Yep.
Hang on. Oh, fine. Okay. I find what my issue is, we often have amazing teachers come through here while they're going to school. And I support that. I support, we give them all of that. And I know once they get that degree that they're going to go. Now I'm proud and happy they could start here. And, once they graduate, then I'm well aware, like, oh no, I currently have 5 with, their teaching degrees. I have one that's student teaching, and I'm like, oh, it's only a matter of time. She's going to get in the district and that's going to be it. So I find that is a very, very big problem, because you want these, oh, it's, great to say, degrees, it's great, but it's not always the best thing. I've already had employees that have only graduated high school and can run circles around these ones that have the piece of paper. Now, with that being said, the ones I currently have, I can't believe they're still here, because they have so many people that they know and can go in to keep them. And I'm fearful for, the future when it comes to, okay, well, they need insurance, they need things that I can't provide, and they're going to go out in the district, and I'm just going to cry. I don't want them to go. They're so great. But I know they've gone to school for this, and this is just a stepping stone for what they consider their future.
Right. And so you're fighting a lot more than just, whatever the rate may be, $11 versus 13 or 14 or 15. You're fighting the benefits that they can get as a teacher, and the potential for job growth and so forth, I'm sure. Peter, Holly, we've been, you're cutting in and out a little bit as we go here, but anyway, we'll move on to Peter.
Okay. We have lost people to higher paying jobs. We only have right now two of our staff with a 4-year degree. So most of our people have their high school diploma. We do have some people with those high school diplomas that are excellent staff. And without them, I don't think our daycare would have survived. We're very fortunate to have them. One of the things that we did up our starting wage through the pandemic by $1. So that helped us a little bit. We actually lost a part-time staff during the pandemic and had returned to us. And, we're spending a lot of time on what I would say the little things, kind of in trying to engage our employees, finding out what's important, showing them that, they're appreciated, that they matter. But, at the end of the day, the wage is what drives a lot of people. We are fortunate that we're able to provide health insurance for our full-time employees. And that's health insurance at no cost to the employee. So that helps us a little bit in recruitment. But, we do, I think right now our 2 longest tenured employees are 8 and 6 years. The rest are about a year. So, we do see the turnover.
Yeah, wow, that's pretty fresh, pretty fresh group. One more area I wanted to discuss with the providers, and then we'll move on and we'll talk about the effect on businesses. But just for this group well knows some of these stories and some of these examples, but for our readership, I wanted to be able to tell them just some of the simple things that maybe have led to extra costs or new demands for your business. I read something where, And I think it was Holly that started out talking about wiping everything down. And it occurred to me, toys, like toys that the children might play with. I mean, you know, I'm a little too old for the, I guess the what's being used today by children, but I think of blocks, you know, simply like, are you like chasing after these little pieces and these toys every day, wiping them down? Did you have to buy more toys or more things that children would touch and so forth, so that not everybody's sharing the same thing? Just some examples there of extra costs for you, and that people may not realize. Anyone?
I could speak of the extra cost. I'm sorry, go ahead, Holly.
I don't know if this is connected. Can you hear me?
We can now.
Is it
You
coming
have been
through?
cutting in and out though.
Yeah, okay. I don't know what is going on. I'm sorry. I didn't realize you did that, Michelle. I would say, you know, as far as cost wise, you know, the cleaning supplies, yeah, maybe a little bit more. Toys, we had a set get wiped down 3 times a day to begin with. So we, you know, you said the example of blocks. Yeah, we have big tubs that are clean toys, that were played with toys, and that are cleaned for the next time, like the next, like after nap time. These are the clean toys that go out if we didn't get them all cleaned at nap time. So we already had that going for us. So that was way, you know, anything that is machine washable, anything like that, that I would launder on a weekly basis, I just put all that stuff away. So everything's hard surface toys, you know, puzzles, anything where I stored away, because they're not, you clean them once with Clorox and they're done. So that was just one of the things for us. Our cost, as far as I noticed, I do buy a lot from the restaurant store, which I don't know if anybody has any ideas. Well, the seafood towels, they went from $13 a case up to $26 a case, and they wash hands like every 10 minutes, I feel. So that was atrocious. Those kind of the paper products and the Clorox wipes, and even the Clorox, you know, at some places. But I noticed there was a huge jump, not $1 or $2. It's crazy jump. Go ahead, Michelle. I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you, Holly. Go ahead, Michelle.
I would agree. You know, the materials in a classroom have to be changed often. The wear and tear on materials is incredible when you have a classroom, you know, of 17 to 20 children. A lot of the material that we use is specialized material, and high quality material is not always plastic and washable. You know, it is a lot of wood. So you are going through wipes, you know, at a fast rate, and going to the stores and even trying to find, you know, the disinfectant that we needed in the early days was really hard to find. So we definitely had to get online and, you know, start to purchase, you know, online. But, you know, the cost of everything has gone up. Just, you know, paying staff more to keep them. You know, I look in my office all the time, like, I don't know if we can afford this, but this is what we're going to pay this one, you know, and we'll try to figure it out, because we will continue to lose. But yeah, we bought a mister. It was a disinfectant mister. I think they came in early on and it was like $3,000. And I was not happy with the idea of purchasing this, but I felt a huge pressure that we needed to keep these children, you know, safe and healthy. I talked to them about the safety of that. What was going into this mister? You know, was it hazardous to children? Of course, we wouldn't use it when they were in the classroom, but we were going to use it at the end of every day, and you'd spray it in the air and it would fall down and, you know, make everything wonderful. That's sitting in our laundry room, and it's a, you know, it's ginormous and it's very cumbersome, and it's not something that is really easy to use safely. It ended up that one of our staff was feeling a little irritated from it, even with the shield and the mask and everything else. So we stopped using it, and then we got those little ones, Marianne, which was free. And we're like, oh, these are great. You know, we can hold it in our hand and we can walk around. And so it always goes back to Marianne, and thank you so much for the support. But yeah, it's been costly.
Peter, some examples of the extra costs for you that endure now, even 2 years in?
Again, you know, we raise staff wages, so that's extra costs without raising rates. We did, you know, the wipes, just like everybody else. You know, one of the things that we were fortunate to get, we did up our Wi-Fi, and we're fortunate to get a grant from the School United Way. So they gave us money so that we could upgrade our Wi-Fi for students. But just the wipes, supplies in general, everything's increasing right now. Inflation is I know about 7%. So we're seeing increases in everything.
Okay.
I think the other thing that I'd chime in on, and I think Holly mentioned it way in the beginning, is, you know, the idea that someone on your staff is exposed to or becomes sick with COVID, and you've got to cover staffing. So we're not only trying to pay the people we currently have more, but we're paying them for more hours. And in the beginning with the Families First Act, can you still hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. You know, that we, you know, we're paying staff while they were off. And so, you know, that was an additional expense that we were incurring. But, you know, staff who are currently working, you know, are working longer hours to be able to do the additional cleaning and disinfecting. And, you know, we saw like a, you know, a peak and valley with prices, you know, the vinyl gloves that we're constantly wearing and changing, you know, were at one price and then skyrocketed and kind of have come down, but are still more costly than originally they were. You know, there definitely have been additional costs involved. We have purchased masks for our children, both cloth and disposable, as well as for our staff, so that they didn't incur any additional expense. So, you know, definitely everything what everyone has already mentioned. One of the things that we did differently in our classrooms is we actually scaled our classrooms back with the materials that were there, and we emphasized with staff the importance of relationship building and what they were doing with the children. And some of the things we're going to continue, you know, after the pandemic. And one is we gave every child their own tray, so that when they take it to the table, they are doing their block building or their manipulatives on this tray that can be sanitized. And they love it. And the other is we always ask young children to share. And this is oftentimes their first experience in a group, and they don't like to share. They're not ready to share. So we created these individual boxes for the children with markers, crayons, their own scissor, their own glue stick. And they are in love with that. And that's something that we're going to carry out of post-pandemic. And, you know, the children just really like the comfort of having something that is their own when they're now in this group environment. So, you know, as difficult as it's been, you know, we've learned some valuable lessons. And, you know, we are a member of Keystone Stars, and they do an environment rating scale for you to achieve a certain level with Keystone Stars, which means having a lot of important things in the environment. But But what we learned is less is best sometimes. And it's not what you have, it's what you do with it. And the relationships that you're building with the children. And I think Holly said it early on too. I'll just, jump on what she said. The children are just thrilled to be in the classroom with people their own size. And, she had said that it doesn't matter whether they have a mask on or not. They are just social creatures who love to be together. And, we're just so happy to be able to be providing a program for them through all of this. So.
Great. Good thoughts. Good. Thank you. Well, I knew that we were onto something with this subject in part just the last couple of days, even with discussions at the federal level, and then yesterday's state budget presentation by Governor Wolf. A few weeks ago, I seen a story about President Biden meeting with a number of CEOs of major companies, to include Ford and GM and Microsoft and Cummins. And the CEO of Microsoft is talking about this problem and said that, Americans, we need to do more to help bring Americans back to work. And one of the key ingredients that we see is that people can only come back to work if they have a way to take care of their children. So that's kind of the essence of why we're having this discussion here. So I was going to ask Bob if you could start out, or Samantha from the chamber. And in reaching out to Bob each year, really, for this project, just to kind of gauge the business community's feelings on the subject that we choose, he mentioned, in writing back to me about childcare providers, he mentioned how a recent survey that Chamber did, I guess they asked, and I'll let Bob explain it, ask about childcare, and a number of them, including Mike at Hydro and Atico that we have with us here today, cited childcare as a major concern. So Bob, I'll let you explain what you're hearing from the Chamber and what you heard in that survey in particular. So go ahead.
Well, thank you. And Samantha conducted the survey, and we have the details, but essentially we know that the major problem for all businesses, corporations, and nonprofits are employees. And there's reasons why we made that significantly worse through the pandemic. I would say that there were problems before the pandemic, but the government subsidization, that was extremely important, because when we made the decision nationally to shut down and worldwide shut down, there really wasn't much option other than to subsidize. The problem with the subsidization is it wasn't completely well designed. It was not time oriented, and it created a whole set of problems. And then you get the government bureaucracy that is in place. And you can imagine government bureaucracy at its best day is not very good. And a lot of government workers are still not back in their offices. And then we have all kinds of system problems. It just so untimely happened that the unemployment compensation system in Pennsylvania was changing out their information system in the middle of this pandemic, I guess because they had it targeted and contracted to do, and it was archaic, so it needed to be replaced. But that throws another monkey wrench in the system. So why do I say all this, and how does it relate to childcare? Well, it's just elongated the process. We still have people on the unemployment compensation system that should not be on the system. Maybe their payments got delayed, but the benefit period was over last fall. And at the end of the day, though, they can't get them out of the system. And we're working very hard through the Pennsylvania Chamber and our local chambers to try to instruct the Department of Unemployment Compensation, like, you've got to do better, because these kind of delays create impacts on all these people on this call. And I should have begun by saying thank you to the childcare workers. I've never done your job. I can imagine how difficult it is. My mother God rest her soul, and my sister were teachers, I think I have a pretty good perspective of how difficult it is to instruct and take care of children. And I know that this has been very difficult, and God bless you, because we need you. There's not one business person that could be on this call or that is on this call that will not tell you that every critical path is important, but we cannot have any employees that can concentrate on their jobs and be in the workforce without you guys. And I know it all too well, because Samantha is so valuable to me, as is Kelly. I'm only mentioning two that have young children. And obviously we, in a staff of 5, have been as impacted as staffs of hundreds and thousands that either cannot get childcare providers for their children, or have to go with the peaks and valleys that you guys need to endure every day. Are you open? Are you closed? And the impacts of that. So that is really what's coming out in the survey. People saying like, yes, we're absolutely impacted by childcare. It's the portal to get our people into the workforce. It's not the only limiting factor, but I might say it's probably the most important limiting factor. And, I think something else that we'll talk more about is, we know that this industry, and I remember for decades with my mother and my sister, the discussion of compensation for people that are rearing our children. And I think the schools in America have made some headway. I'm not saying they're still not underpaid. I'm just saying that clearly it impacts where people want to go. You cannot do these difficult jobs and continue to want to do them and be minimally compensated and wake up every morning and say, that's okay. Because eventually the pressures of this get to you. And in the world we live in now, where all these jobs are open, there are thousands and thousands of easier jobs in childcare. And that's why God bless these professionals that are doing this great job and really care about it. And we know that the formative years of these children are right now, right at their youngest ages. And, there's nothing more enjoyable in life than watching these kids develop at this early age, because it's going to set the stage for how well they are adapted and members of society for the future. So this is the critical path, and this is important. And the business leaders are impacted and to some degree victimized by problems, not at these providers' levels, but the lack of resources in the system to get this done. And, I know later we'll talk about the government funding, and we're all in. One of the major things that we could be very supportive of in advocacy, both at the state level and at the national level, is more money into the childcare system. And I know that later you're probably going to discuss about Build Back Better. And the only thing that I'll say about that is, we don't need legislation that has the witch's stew brewing and all these other kind of impacts that will eventually hurt business and cause, whether it's my camera or others, a lot of other problems besides childcare. But we would be right on top of and advocating strongly for a separate legislative initiative on childcare, both more at the state level, more at the national level, because these people need funding, and we need more childcare providers, not less. We need to pay them more, and we need to support what they're doing. We're all in it together. There can't be good workforces without good childcare providers. And, that's really what the survey tells us. And the more particular details of that, probably if there's questions, Samantha could answer. But we're happy to be here, and we want to support all of our members, but it begins with workforce strength, and workforce strength needs to be built on the foundation of childcare.
Very good. Well said, Bob. Well, Samantha, did you want to jump in? I don't know if you have any specific numbers from that survey. I know it wasn't, I don't think, all based on childcare, but if there's anything you can share that would be relevant, feel free.
Yeah, thank you. So I don't have the specific numbers, but what I can tell you is when we looked at that, I don't think that we were surprised that childcare was one of the top 3 limiting factors of the workforce returning back to work. So you know, as I said, as a mom, and I'm very fortunate. I think that it's been very difficult because I can see it from the business side and I see it from the parent side. And I truly feel I can't, you know, and I'll full disclosure, my daughter goes to Perception, and, you know, I can't thank Michelle and everyone on this call enough for everything, because I know when I was working from home and Sloan was home, I was like, I don't know how they do this. I don't know how they do this, you know? So I think that it's extremely important that we find ways to continue developing the high quality education centers that we have. And we need to find ways to bring in more of them because we need them. They're so needed. The surveys are telling us that, our members are telling us that. You know, I don't think there's a day or a week that goes by that Bob and I aren't talking to one of our members about workforce and childcare. So this is a very, you know, extremely important topic. And, you know, however I can help, I'll see if I can pull some numbers from that survey and see. That was done very early on. I believe when we did that, we were still kind of more shut down, you know, but I'm happy to pull anything I can.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for that. And meantime, I knew one of the areas or one of the people most affected by this are not on the call are parents. So I'm happy to have some input from a parent here, and we may reach out to the providers to see if you can get us in touch with a couple in the days after the session here. But so meanwhile, let's hear some of the real stories of the struggles of the impact on staffing and productivity and morale, perhaps, and all those things at some of our businesses here in the county. I'll start, we'll go with ladies first with Angela at Atico. Tell us a little bit about what's going on and how you're trying to address childcare problems.
Sure. So first I want to say it's been really enlightening for me to hear about all of the different perspectives to a common issue that we have. And I'm glad that it's finally getting the attention it deserves, both locally and nationally, because it's definitely something that needs to be addressed. From a business perspective, it causes less individuals to be in the workforce. So, you know, whether working parents are choosing not to work and stay home with children due to COVID safety concerns, or just the unavailability of childcare. Some chose, you know, when parents, you know, were forced to stay home, some chose just to remain in that capacity. You know, so as employers, we have had to learn to be much more flexible with our associates because a lot of issues are completely out of their control. And we acknowledge that, and we take each case by case issue and we try to work with our parents the best we can. Holly had mentioned earlier that you know, with Schuylkill County being in a high transmission for so long, especially this year, you know, daycares and childcare are seeing much more sickness with the children. Well, that in turn impacts business because those parents then, you know, are called and, you know, God forbid it is COVID, then you have the CDC recommended isolation periods, you know, then the quarantine for the close contacts and so on. So it's been quite a journey, but I think the thing that here we try to be as flexible as possible and try to recognize when things aren't in the control of the associate, and we try to work with them the best that they can, because all of these issues impact everybody, including our workers, our parents, all of you. So.
Okay. Do you have any examples off the top of your head of, you say about being flexible, and I could name some from what we've experienced here, but anything in particular, just allowing somebody to start late and work late, or
Sure.
work a Saturday, or you know, bring your child in?
Yep, I've actually, this week I had a particular case where an associate had been out due to a COVID related issue and was due to return on a specific day. However, they called and they said, well, I don't have childcare. They can't return to school till the next day. So we're excusing that for that associate because it was out of their control. We're not holding that against them. We work with them because, the workforce in general is very stressed out and fatigued. So we try to do what we can to help, mitigate as much of that as possible.
Okay, all right, very good. Mike, down at Hydro, tell us some of what you're dealing with.
Yeah, I think I'll offer a unique perspective from a big manufacturer. Right? So, I mean, pre-pandemic, certainly childcare was a variable in recruiting and retaining employees. However, during the pandemic, it really surfaced significantly. Like Angela said, we've done a lot to you have to be flexible in this labor market. If you're not flexible and adapting, you're dead. Is basically how we had to survive because certainly the applicant pool was a lot shallower here during this time frame, and what we've seen is a lot of sorry about my light, a lot of retention issues with employees who just couldn't quite make it. So we were flexible with start times to a degree. We do offer a lot of different disciplines here in terms of work at the facility. So we have professional jobs, but we also have, shop floor jobs. And the professional jobs, there's you have a lot more latitude, with them. And on the shop floor, our flexibility surfaced in terms of more of the shift that is available for you. So we have different shifts, alternatives that they could partner with their spouse to try to make the situation work. But some of the short notice, the daycare is going to close, or the daycare staffing didn't show up today, or I took my child there and they're teething and they have a fever, or they have allergies and they're showing symptoms and they're not allowed in today. I can't make it to work. Again, we're flexible with them, but at some point in time, then there's their peers. You talk about morale, Dave, I think, or Andy, you asked about morale. In the work environment, when Mike doesn't show up, every day, and then others are left to carry the burden, it definitely weighs on them as well. And I've been asked a lot by our employees more recently than ever about, can you do something to provide daycare on site? So accessibility, availability, and that also gives them a form of flexibility where it's more convenient for folks, in the path of their work, so to speak, for them to be able to, to gain that resource. So, I think I'll just kind of pull up there and see if there's any other questions you have for me, follow up.
Is there any larger discussions about that on the daycare on site, childcare on site?
Yeah, well, it's more so now than ever, because again, you talk about good companies that learn to adapt in the environment and survive. You got to be out there, with it. So, and I've also reached out to some childcare providers to see if they would partner with us, and even privately subsidize. So, not looking to the big government to help us out. What can we do? Because again, it would differentiate us, and hopefully Mrs. Tease isn't in there writing this stuff down, because we compete, right? There's a limited labor market, and you got to get unique to compete for that resource, and being able to do that. But I am not in the daycare, childcare business at all. I run an extrusion business, so I don't know anything about certifications, regulations, things of that nature. So, that's one of the barriers that I think is in front of me right now. Albeit not an insurmountable barrier, but it's it's significant enough that it's slowing the journey.
Do you know of any instances? I know some larger companies do that. You know of any cases where Hydro has at other locations does provide on-site childcare?
They've looked into it certainly, but no, they haven't really gone forward with it. So I'm blessed here with having. Sorry about this light. I'm with having the facilities to be able to do it. So I've got like 26 buildings on campus here. So we could do it, but again, how do you set it up that it's compliant? I don't know that, right? So
right, and along with Angela cringing from that or thinking about her competitive side. You've got the other providers here that, you know, in a sense, you maybe become a competitor, but again, maybe a partner too. But just real quick with Mike, you talked about productivity, or you talked about the fact that you're a manufacturer. Yeah, you can't extrude aluminum from home. Your professional office people, whatever, can do so. But from a production standpoint, has it affected your output, or you have had to adjust a lot to make sure you do meet the the demands of the business?
Oh yeah, I mean, absolutely. So, I mean, that's how I get the business case to be able to even consider, heading down that path. But you look at the lost revenues and lost profits because of, so people don't show up, the machines don't run. And, again, childcare availability is a variable in it. There's a lot of variables, but it's certainly one that is getting more and more, more and more light shed on it here in this pandemic related economy.
Okay. You mentioned as we were getting started there, over 1,100 employees, you said right now?
Actually, I just checked. It was 1177.
77. Wow.
Yeah.
Yes, I can imagine all the potential small but important cases of childcare trouble within all that number of employees. I cut someone off before that was going to jump in as we were talking.
Yeah, Andy, it's Karen from Octal. Just wanted to make sure that folks were aware of a resource that we've been working on. We partnered with folks at the Early Learning Investment Commission. That's the governor-appointed commission of business leaders across the state. There are some ELA commissioners who work for corporations that have had success in this area and looking at how to support their employees with childcare. We actually developed a toolkit that's on the DHS website because there's a whole range of things that employers could do to support their staff when they think about childcare. And it's things that are as simple as making sure that you have connections at your local early learning resource center so that all of the information about what subsidies are available and how to help support new staff in finding childcare, you've got those connections to what you would need to do if you were going to actually run your own childcare. And there's a whole set of things, and it's a continuum that you could do in between. Partnering with other childcare providers, looking at providing vouchers or supporting an EITC. So we have this kind of toolkit that is really supposed to help. The goal is to help employers kind of stop and think about what would it look like if I thought of childcare as another benefit. Similar to health insurance or paid time off. Like what could I do? What's going to, work for my organization? Because it's not a one size fits all thing. Not every organization is going to have the space and the capacity to say, I'm going to open an on-site childcare, but there are other things that can happen. So I just wanted to make sure that folks were aware that tool is available. We also have our business partners at the Pennsylvania Key. They do a lot of technical assistance that support our pre-K and childcare community, but they are also using this tool and offering some fee-for-service kind of models with businesses that are interested in talking through, what that might look like in your organization. And so these are experts that know what it takes to open childcare in Pennsylvania. They understand the regulatory process. And they can help a business kind of stop and think through what are the best options for them. So I just wanted to make sure that those resources were known to folks. They're in their very early stages, but we're really kind of excited about them because, again, even prior to the pandemic, the Governor's Workforce Command Center had identified childcare as a real key thing that we needed to be paying attention to because it is a real barrier to the economic expansion in the Commonwealth. And so this was recognized. So we're excited about the work, and I'd be glad to talk with anybody offline about it too and make sure that they have those resources available.
Oh, excellent. Good. No, I'm glad you jumped in there. It was perfect timing. Mike, did you have some?
I'm just giving her a thumbs up. Thank you.
Oh, okay.
I'd be happy to continue a discussion, with any of the business partners regarding an interest in opening an on-site facility. We tried it in the past, but that doesn't mean we can't try again. And it is a commitment on both the providers end as well as the business partners end to have it be successful.
Good, very good. Well, Karen kind of did the perfect transition for me there. I wanted to talk a little bit about help from the government, funding and so forth. There's a lot going on right now. And as I mentioned earlier, and as recent as yesterday with the governor and the budget, Karen, I don't know if you can weigh in anything more about this. There's one of the proposals, which doesn't apply to this group per se, but could, well, maybe it does in terms of the employers. $30 million in funding for 2 new childcare options for state employees. We obviously have state employees, you know, possibly some that work for Hydro and work for Atico. Do you know anything about that? Have you heard about that ahead of the budget? As a big employer, obviously the state has some of these same problems.
Well, exactly. And that's kind of where the governor was going. Again, looking at what the workforce command centers identified and what they would describe as a model employer. And then that would be somebody that, again, looks at childcare as another benefit that they could offer their employees. They're still very early stages of, you know, looking at this, and it's going to, you know, require the General Assembly to agree to the allocation. But the goal would be to look at state employees and to have the state be able to kind of, you know, be in a position to say that we are, as a state, as a Commonwealth, we are a model employer. And we're taking these things into consideration for the large state, you know, the workforce in the state, that, you know, the public servants that are doing this work. So there's a couple of different options that are being looked at. Again, the same things that I was just talking about. It's not a one size fits all. You know, looking at space to actually house the center, and then thinking about the impacts to a local community and the childcare community that's already existing in that. The disruptions either because of, you know, enrollment or teaching staff, you know, trying to think through all of those things and come up with some different options for staff. So it's very early in the conversations, and we hope to have a lot more information to share as we start to get the reactions from the General Assembly as to, you know, how they feel about this. They did try to do some, you know, kind of feeling around because, you know, legislative staffers, they're state employees. So these are all, you know, all of our legislative body has staff within their offices that I'm sure they're hearing from in terms of what's happening in the childcare world. And they've got a stake in all of this. So we're excited, but not a whole lot just yet to be able to talk about and know what's going to happen.
That's an interesting point. I mean, there's tens of thousands, I think, probably that work for the state, and including the legislators, including the lawmakers who are of course, parents themselves in many cases. So the other thing that was mentioned was a PA opportunity program, and that would provide relief to workers and families from the high cost of childcare and household expenses, and support opportunities to complete a degree, credential, or license to strengthen skills and increase income, all leading to a better quality of life. I guess anyone at this point to weigh in on the notion of getting, and we talked about this a little bit previously, of getting some state or federal funding that would help solve some of these inherent foundational problems of the service industry, in this case, childcare. Happy to see those kind of things coming along, or should government not get too involved? Bob, you have to have a thought on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's different roles for government, and there's things government should be involved with, and there's things they shouldn't. I mean, we're talking probably a lot of money here, and so I guess at the end of the day, it's valid to say that our taxpayers' dollars need to be considered here. It's just that when you get into, you know, the first reaction I have to the state dealing with a government workers is it may or may not answer the question. In fact, it may even cause a rub of what happens with the general population. I'm not a big believer that government employees, I'm sorry for those that are government employees, are entitled to more than the private sector. We pay our taxes, and I think that we have very acute problems in the private sector, and I'm fine with the government running some kind of pilot and understanding that their workforces need to be taken care of. But quite frankly, we've got millions of people in America that are not government workers who their workforces need to be taken care of too. And these are sectors of industries that really run the nation. There would be no government employees if these people weren't paying taxes to run our nation. So I'm pretty emphatic about that. And I worked with government, as you all know, and I was in a large government segment, not the state of Pennsylvania, but obviously Schuylkill County government. And again, I'm all in for benefits. I know people sometimes work in government because the benefits are good and all that. But I think we need to be very, very, very careful here. We have an industry that's underserved, underfunded, under number of professionals. And I want to see some solutions to some of these problems personally to help our workforce. I think too many times, and I'm a little bit on the soapbox here, but we lose a perspective that nothing happens well if we don't have valued employers employing people who put money into the economy, improve their family's quality of life, and yes, probably, unfortunately to most, pay significant numbers of taxes, which produces government. And so I think we need to be very, very careful of how many things we ask government to do, because generally they don't do them that well. I'm sorry to say that, but they don't. They're not the most efficient systems. And I think part of even the pandemic funding is not that it's not well intentioned, but it's not well developed. It's not operationally sound, and it causes other impacts and other problems. So I don't know if that really answers your questions. I think it sounds a little bit like I'm sour graping on government, but I don't think operationally it's as sound as the private sector. I think the best entrepreneurial initiatives, including in childcare, can happen by getting funding into the right people's hands that are the qualified professionals that can do this the best.
Okay, no, I asked, Bob, that's good. Anyone else on how, and I don't want to just focus on how government can help here or bail out or anything like that, but just working towards solutions here. I mean, I think some of the things that have been mentioned, are maybe a mix of government and private efforts to improve this landscape and improve this problem. But just any thoughts? And let me just say too, I was going to maybe take a break around this time, but I think, at least from my perspective, I think we're getting close to wrapping this up. So maybe if we can just kind of power through here for another 10 or 15 minutes. We'll stay till noon if we need it, by all means, but I know you're all business folks and have other things to do. So, but anyway, just some thoughts in terms of what, if anything, the government can do, or other things that need to happen to so that a year from now or whenever this is a better situation.
I think I can kind of piggyback a little bit on what Robert was saying with how it's not always the best answers that we get from government. When we first shut down, the PPP was offered, and I looked at my administration of 2 people and I said, it doesn't make sense right now to take this loan and not have staff willing to come into work, not have families who feel safe to come in for our services. It's almost felt like we were going to bail out the unemployment crisis by taking out this loan and paying staff to be at home. And so that didn't feel right to me. And then once I knew that we were going to be opened back up, once I knew that we could come back, then that support made more sense. That, hey, now we can pay staff without children to really get prepared, to train, to get these classrooms ready, in a way that is going to keep children safe. And so we were able to use that money very productively at that later time to get the classrooms ready, to get the staff ready. And so, investing investing, the problems that we have in childcare now is that sometimes it's easier to just collect unemployment rather than to come in. We've spent a lot of time not collecting tuition during quarantine and also paying staff at the same time during quarantine. So no tuition coming in, but still having to maintain staff payroll at its highest. We looked at each other and said, how long can this go on? How long can this go on? So I don't have any answers, but I do feel that there's a good discussion there as to where does the money really need to go? I heard a lot of conversations just out in the community about people being granted, an abundance of money and they not even knowing what to do with it or how to use it productively to kind of move forward. We want to get out of the oppression and be able to use that money for a long-term good, not just, hey, we've got some money here that we can kind of, blow through. It has to be a real solution, to the problem, not a temporary fix. Does that make sense?
Yeah, along those lines, and I'm not sure that that's what you're referring to, but I think of the situation with municipalities right now with, tens or hundreds of thousands or millions in some cases of dollars through the various rescue programs that, it's kind of a good problem, but they're all debating how to use it. And do you go long-term, with some of these investments? And of course, you got to keep in mind this money's not going to be repeating. It's a one-time and cash infusion, as they used to say. But so, yeah, I don't know if, maybe somewhere with that, there can be some more help for providers such as yourselves. Peter, I just thought maybe I'd ask you to jump in there. What do you see a year from now for First Friends, for your operation there, or a year or two from now? We have you, you're muted yet.
Sorry. I wish I had a crystal ball. What I've learned since March 20 is to take it one day at a time. Obviously, we're planning to be here. Whether we find a partnership with somebody, but it's going to be difficult. One of the things I just wanted to bring up, and we also provide with older adult daycare. And I just want to give you a comparison here. So our lowest payer in older adult daycare, we get per person about $304 a week. Our highest rate for childcare is $180 a week. Okay, so for that $180 a week, you're talking about 10 hours of care a day. Older adult, we're looking at about 6.5 hours a day. So I think there, we can, hate to say it, but until we see like a real focus on childcare and, a value, it has to be more valued in government. I'm not saying the people working in it don't value it, but from a funding standpoint, that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. If the money's there to fund older adult daycare at that level, why can't it be there for childcare?
I think it gets to the the heart of some of the things that you folks have said about, and it does seem from whether you talk about the governor's proposal or Build Back Better, and again, I'm not saying this in a political sense, but just the recognition at least that this is a real, this is at the heart of some repairs to the system, if you will. So someone else wanted to jump in there. Go ahead.
I just want to echo what Peter said. I was writing a little note here about value. As a society, we need to value childcare. We need to understand what the true cost of quality is. If parents are expected to be able to pay the true cost, people need to be making living wages so they can support themselves and their families. And again, paying the true cost. I would love to see the state reimbursement rate under the subsidy cost of care is. And I do want to encourage everyone to use the terminology childcare. not daycare, not like Marianne said earlier. I think it was Marianne, this is not babysitting. It's a profession when done well. When providing quality is expensive and it takes well-trained professionals to do it well.
Well said. Thank you. What else, please? I know that.
I would just,
Go ahead.
I would just like to add into that. It's just, I thank you for recognizing and how you put your heart and soul into something when you're 24/7. Are these children and these families, to hear that, and you're not used to hearing it, it means a lot. It just continues to get harder, especially with things like the pandemic, when, you know, everything's upside down to begin with, and then supposed to follow and listen. That probably for us, for me, through any of this, as far as knowing what I'm supposed to do, was I could talk to 4 different people within 20 minutes and still get as not having any kind of, you know, guidance that I hate. I don't want to use the word trust, because I trust, but not when it keeps changing. And it's not like it's a daily thing. It's literally, the one day was 4 times 4 different answers. So I'm supposed to relay this information to parents and to staff members. And then 10 minutes later, oh wait, he was wrong. That was probably one of the hardest things, you know. Then that even made us look worse. Because, like, what do you do? Like, you know, going back and forth all the time with that. That was hard. But just to hear somebody and to have that validation, that really, it is hard, as I'm sure everybody else in the business knows, or even moms and dad, you know, you all know. It's not like baking a cake. Like, if you mess it up, you can't throw it away. Like, this is really important, you know, things that we're doing and trying to do. So I do appreciate it.
Well, great. Yeah, good. And we appreciate what you do. I thought that was interesting. We've all had our stories about, especially anyone who manages people, but just in the general day-to-day living right now, the confusion that's out there in terms of guidance and so forth. But your point sticks out to me, Holly, about then you've got to take that. It's one thing to consume it for yourself and figure things out. You've got to communicate it to parents. And that's that is no enviable task there. That could get very intimidating, I would think, and very difficult in trying to have them trust you when you're not sure if you trust the information you got. So interesting. What else? Again, I know that you folks probably made some notes on things. If I didn't bring up a particular topic or what have you, the floor is open.
I think it also can be said, when Holly was talking about the difficulty of the work, we're not just educating children. You know, in our center here, I'm a janitor. I'm taking out, you know, 20 loads of trash a day. I'm painting the building myself, you know, every couple of years. Used to be every year, now it's every couple, because I'm getting older. But you're doing so much. You're doing laundry, you know, you're cleaning the room. And one of the new teachers that I hired this year, you know, she's a beautiful person with a BS degree. And I pray every day, will she stay? Because she looked at me and she said, this is the hardest job that I have ever had. You know, like she just laid it out there. Like, I just had no idea. You know, coming on board, they think that they're just going to sit and, you know, love children, you know, because that's what you hear in the interview. I love children, but there's so much more. There's so much more to it.
They probably weren't trained about taking out the trash, I'm sure.
Well, I do that myself because we have a fire escape and I don't want anybody falling, because then I would lose them.
Understood.
So, yeah.
Great
I
stuff.
have learned through the interview process that I have to plan out and say, this is a difficult job. You don't just sit and color all day. I expect cleaning. You have to change diapers. Like, I have learned to literally, okay, you have to just put it out there, because I don't want to have to tell you to pick up a broom. I mean, it's just, the work ethic is a little different. I find as the years go on, wow, that's all I can say. Like, I just can't believe you would have to tell somebody, hey, can you wipe off the table, or can you wipe their nose? Like, you shouldn't have to do that. I feel there's a huge difference as far as the work ethic now, even from 10 years ago.
Yes.
I think, Andy, that it's pretty clear that, and we hear it all the time, we hear it from these professionals. The wage issue is a big issue because they're not competing as well as they need to against other choices. The choices used to be maybe other educational choices, but now it's a lot of choices. I mean, basically people are leaving professions, changing professions because, it's risk reward. It's, how much can you take? We all have emotional stress because of this pandemic. But then, mothers in the workforce have to go home and be mothers. And these childcare providers are mothers too. And there's just so much that people can take, and then they're losing employees over compensation. That's true about almost every profession, because as the number of people willing to work get less, wages go up, but choices get more, and it's just very difficult. And this is so critical, I think, because whatever happens right now in this childcare environment, honestly, gets passed on to our school systems, right? A lack of child development is going to continue with the child forever. And then we talk about, well, what's going on in our elementary schools? What's going on in our middle schools? What's going on in our high schools? How do people become these kind of people? There was a person yesterday on the national news that all over the craziness of a mask mandate in a school, allowing people to make a choice of taking their mask off, somebody pulled a knife on a student and threatened to kill him in the classroom. Like, these kind of things are like so out of bounds, but yet it's happening. It's happening for a lot of reasons. But take the environment that everybody is in now and move it down the road a couple decades, and what are we going to have? And so I think you're never going to build a house without a good foundation. This is the foundation. We've got to really concentrate on this, I think. It has immediate impact in the workforce, but it's going to have a lifelong impact on our communities, on who these future leaders become. And I think they've all said it. We haven't taken this seriously enough. I think not enough people understand it. Hopefully this business review sheds light on it. And quite frankly, I think we all have to rally around it. We have to rally around it. It's a basic element that really in so many ways hits all of us, both as business leaders, as citizens in society, as mothers and fathers, people caring about other people. And I want to clarify that when I said what I said about government and government funding, I know that whether it's infrastructure, roads, bridges, or childcare, some of this stuff is well beyond what we can do without government assistance. All I'm suggesting is it's got to be well designed and targeted. And quite frankly, this is where we need to really work hard, which we try to do in educating our elected officials, because too many times they vote on things and they don't know the depth of breadth of it. And I understand they can't stop and learn it all, but it's incumbent upon us as a group of caring citizens, and in our case, the Chamber of Commerce with 800 members, to help educate them. And with the help of these providers, we're going to continue to do that.
Excellent. Very good. Angela, were you, did you want to say something? Oh, okay, all right.
I'll just say something to kind of wrap up, and I agree with Bob on the state spending side about the subsidies, as long as they're well aligned and pointed in the right area. I know as a private as a private business, we're held accountable for what we spend our money on, and what kind of return it gets for us. So I would agree with that point. Also want to thank you for being open to allow me to be on the panel. I did learn a lot. I learned a lot from the folks that were here. So you gave me some leads and some information I could follow up on. And I do admire a lot of folks that are in this childcare industry, so to speak. And my hat's off to you. And I feel much better now too, knowing that it is about education and development and teaching social skills and all stuff, because it is so important. Not just to the business, just the society in general as we go forward. And, so thank you for, laying the foundation. It's so critical for us for the next generation to move forward with. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Wow, yeah, you just took care of me wrapping up. I couldn't have done it that well. I think that was excellent. If no one has anything else, I think maybe it is a good point to wrap up. Certainly, if you have a thought or a clarification or some other information that occurs to you in the next day or two, feel free to email it to me. And again, we're going to we may reach out to some of the providers, maybe get some photos at your facilities, and maybe talk to a parent or two. And otherwise, again, thank you so much for taking part in this, and we'll have it all together for the February 25th edition. And with that, again, just thank you very much. I thought it was a great discussion, and we appreciate your time very much. So
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for the opportunity.
You're welcome. Sure.
Thanks.
Yep. Bye.
Thank you. Good luck, everybody.
Yeah, thanks.